when you're setting up a patrol base, right? The fundamentals, the characteristics, and the components of the defense apply. Okay, even when we're in the offense, the fundamentals of the defense need to apply. Ultimate peel it all the way back. However, right, and there's really one reason we conduct the defense in the United States Army. Right, there's only one reason. We're not a defensive army. We're offensive in nature. Right. So we defend to create conditions to resume the offense. Okay. And if you look across the width, the depth, the breadth of our weapon systems, they are offensive in nature. All right. If we were a defensive army, we would still be using something that resembles the M60A3 main battle tank. But instead we have the Abrams, right? We have a tank that goes in excess of 40 miles per hour across country, right? And it can engage targets in excess of 2 kilometers with absolute precision while it's going miles per hour across country, right? That's offensive, right? The Bradley fighting vehicle, same thing. The Paladin, the M109A7 self-propelled howitzer, that's an offensive weapon system, okay? Our mortar carriers, the M1064 tracked mortar carriers with mortar fire control system is absolutely offensive in nature because I can pull that track up, flip it around, open up the top hatches, plug in a target, and I have 1 meter accuracy within minutes. Right. So we're offensive in nature, right? But there are defensive components and aspects to everything we do. Right. So with that, start off, let's talk characteristics of the defense. All right. Anybody remember these?
This isn't the same as like surprise and the stuff we covered last week, is it?
Nope.
Okay.
We're different. I'll give you the first one. Preparation. All right, so what's preparation mean? Yeah, similar, we talk mission analysis, we talk military decision making, we talk troop leaders. It's gathering the tools, it's conducting our planning, it's conducting rehearsals, right? And it's the preparation, the physical preparation of a defense, right? Yeah, so what are some things in the physical preparation of a defense we need to do?
Maybe if we are anticipating the need to call in for like air defense or anything like that, we have all radios, communications, and stuff in place to be able to contact outside of wherever we're, whatever. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time this morning.
No, I'll kind of hone that in for you a little bit, right? It's organizing our forces, right? That's our task organization. It's assigning a task and purpose, okay? And it's positioning our forces so that we can do one of these later steps, the characteristics of the defense, right? Called massing effects. All right. How about security? I'm talking multiple kinds of security here in a defense as well. All right. What you guys are most familiar with is I have local security, right? I have 360-degree local security. When we talk a more deliberate defense, I don't just have my local security. That's my responsibility as an individual, as a fire team, as a squad, as a platoon, right? I'm responsible for local security, right? But I may be also responsible for another kind of security mission called a screen, okay? And a screen is a form of security typically conducted by a reconnaissance element like a scout platoon, right? But anyone can really conduct the screen, right? Because it's identification and it's early warning. Okay, so really anyone can conduct the screen. So you'll hear some people say screen line, right? That's not a line. We don't draw a line on the ground and screen line, right? It's just called, it's a screen is the correct term, right? But it's a security operation that buys time and space for the main body of the defense. Okay, and we can use a screen in the offense as well as a security force. So if you look at Desert Storm, um, and you look as how forces were going, you saw Third Armored Cavalry Regiment was moving in between friendly forces, and they were actually conducting what's called a moving flank screen, right? So they were covering. Well, actually, it was really a cover because it's an armored cavalry regiment, but they were covering a saleable flank of a moving attack corps, right? Which is something an ACR can do. All right. Next one. Disruption. Right. What's disruption mean there, Mosick?
As far as in regards to the enemy, it's one of like your purposes, like you're there to disrupt any sort of movement or potential access that the enemy may have in the area.
Yeah, you have to prevent him from having the ability to mass his combat power, right? That's no bueno for us. Definitely don't want the bad guy massing his combat power. All right, so that's what disruption does here. All right, so how do we achieve disruption? And it's going to be through our next one. Is how we'll also achieve our purpose in the defense.
We could disrupt the like obstacles and like how we mass our fires.
Yeah, there we go. Massing effects. We've talked about this a few times, how we mass effects, right? You hit on one of them, obstacles, right? If I'm defending, I need a deliberate tactical obstacle plan, right? In a deliberate defense that provides or prevents the enemy from massing his combat power on my force, right? And we'll talk about different obstacle effects we can achieve. Okay. Now, I won't go into depth. We won't pull out the build tables on how long and what the requirements are for these different types of obstacles, right? We'll just talk obstacle intent, right? But just know that there's a book out there that tells you if you're gonna block an enemy, like here's the requirement, right? Do you have the time and assets to block? Probably not, right? That's a really difficult obstacle effect. All right, what else do we use to achieve disruption and mass effects?
Terrain.
Yeah, utilize terrain, right? Understand terrain, understand the effects of terrain and weather, right? Obstacles. What else we have?
Sort of like the secondary effect of like where exactly our positioning is, like key locations, denying access to certain avenues or resources.
Well, we're going to walk through this next, right? Engagement area development. All right, and the 7 steps of EA development are going to take us through all those aspects of where I place weapon systems, how I tie in my direct fire weapon systems to achieve effect on the enemy, right? And also how I allocate and utilize indirect fires, potentially close combat attack, fixed wing, close air support, right? And all of those things to achieve the mass, to achieve disruption, right? And be able to destroy that enemy, right? What's the last characteristic of defense? Anybody pull it up yet? Bose?
The last characteristic?
Yep.
I do not know.
right, flexibility. And how can you achieve flexibility in defense?
Just being able to adjust to whatever's happening.
Right, have the ability, right? So we got to do that in our planning process. You know, defense offers us a few things, right? Time. If you're defending, if you're conducting deliberate defense, you have time. Time is on your side, right? So you can use time to develop contingency plans, right? You can have primary, alternate, supplementary, and subsequent battle positions, right? So I'm actually able to move in a defense. I'm not digging a hole and staying in it. It's not a grave, right? Don't confuse the defense for digging graves, right? The defense still has offensive aspects to it, right? I need to be able to move, right? I'm not going to take an Abrams tank, the most maneuverable offensive weapon system on this planet, and dig it into a hole and leave it there, right? That's dumb, right? I'm going to build my defense so I can still have a maneuver aspect and an offensive aspect to my defense, right? So I can do that through multiple battle positions, right? I can prepare my defense in depth. I can conduct it just across an area, right, where I have defined areas for my subordinate units. I can form a reserve, right, depending on my organization, right? Companies have a hard time forming reserve. Battalions can do it okay. Brigades can form a reserve really well, right? Right. So you might find yourself as a platoon leader as a brigade reserve. You can have a deliberate counterattack as part of your defense, right? And your utilization of, well, your intelligence preparation to the battlefield, and then your utilization of your ISR assets, your intelligence, security, and reconnaissance assets, right, will also inform how you defend, right? So those are characteristics of the defense there. Move them away and make them small. I like that whiteboard. That's cool, isn't it? Welcome to the 20th century. All right. Big thing we really want to focus on here, though, today is engagement area development, right? Because those of you who still need to go to advance camp, I guarantee if you get the defensive lane and you follow the 7 steps of EA, you're going to get a go. It's that simple, because everyone will look at it and be like, oh yeah, I've heard of that before, and he used it, right? I don't care if that's a dang ordnance officer out there writing your blue card on that lane. You use the 7 steps of EA development, they're going to recognize it and be like, all right, this cadet's pretty clever. Ugh. Right. I'm just adding letters here, so ignore that. All right, 7 steps EA development. So give me the first one. Anybody using the Google machine?
Identify all enemy avenues of approach.
Yeah. All right. ID all likely enemy avenues of approach. What's that mean, Prosser?
Recognizing ahead of time during your preparation period through any maps or any other, maybe like if you conducted recon prior to that point, and making sure that any areas that the enemy might take to get to the wherever your force is holding up, that is maybe blocked off for terrain analysis. Or if you can't block it off entirely, like as we said last time, that's highly unlikely to do. Still being aware of what avenue of approach they might take.
You're right, and this is part of our analysis, right? This is part of our terrain analysis. We identify mobility corridors. We identify no-go terrain, restricted terrain, highly restricted terrain, right? Trafficable terrain. We identify what size element can use that piece of terrain. Okay. We know that and terrains regardless of friendly or enemy, neutral or unknowns, right? Terrain is terrain. Terrain's neutral, right? So we know that this is a platoon-sized mobility corridor, or this is a battalion-sized avenue of approach, right? And Sergeant B, Sergeant Wilson talked to you guys about the multiple combined obstacle overlay. You heard about this thing? All right, lucky you. Right, because if you build a multiple combined obstacle overlay to standard, right, that's the proper way to conduct terrain analysis. Right, and within that, it will identify and define for you, help you identify and define the terrain, right, and identify mobility corridors and define avenues of approach. Right. What's number 2 here?
Identify or determine enemy schemes of maneuver.
All right. Right, how do we do that?
Do we have to identify any important well, like, I know you already said terrain analysis, but you should have to be aware of what like their size is and how they'll be moving you.
Yeah, what's his task organization and how, right? How does the enemy organize himself to fight? Right? And if you don't know that, you don't know what your enemy's doctrine is, what do you use?
Our doctrine.
Yeah, there you go. Because they're probably going to fight similar to how we fight, right? Probably not going to be a whole lot different.
I thought that was about to go all Sun Tzu there.
No. Nah,
If
you don't have to go all Sun Tzu on it.
If you don't know your enemy, you know.
Just give it a little know yourself, know your enemy, and you're going to be doing pretty good, right? It's not overly complicated, right? Especially at the small unit level. At the platoon level, what are they going to do when they're attacking? They're going to support. They might have to breach, right? So they have some kind of breach force, and they're going to assault. Are they going to do it to the left, or are they going to do it to the right? Or are they going to try to go right up the middle, right? It's like football, right? You think football in the 1940s. What plays did we have? Run it up the middle, run it to the left, run it to the right. We don't use the forward pass, right? So that's what they got. Right. Not a whole lot of options on how to crack that nut at the platoon level. Right. Pretty easy. Right. So, but determine how he's going to use the avenues of approach and to train to his advantage, right? Because he's not just going to do it in a vacuum, right? The enemy is going to account for the same things we need to account for. Right? So once we've determined how he's attacking, what his scheme of maneuver is, what are we going to do?
Determine where to kill the enemy.
Yeah. All right. And that area where we kill the enemy, what do we call it?
The kill zone?
No.
Oh.
What do we call
Objective?
it? No. Yes, the engagement area. Right. All right, so when we're on the offense and the enemy's defending, that's what we refer to as a kill zone, right? But when we do it, it's an engagement area. Right, engagement area. That's where we want to mass the effects. Right. If you look back to the characteristics of the defense, we want to mass the effects into the engagement area. All right, and that's where we're going to kill the enemy. 4. Talked about these earlier.
Plan and integrate obstacles.
All right. All right. What kind of obstacles do we have?
Maybe an example would be like some like hidden pit that they could fall into.
Let's think obstacle effects. All right. So I'm going to give you some of these now. All right. If I draw that, does that mean anything to anyone?
So there's like a ditch.
Is it disrupt?
That is not disrupt. That one's called fix. Okay. So if I draw a fix, what am I doing?
Is that like where you want to? Is that where you want to put the enemy on the engagement area? That's where you want them to be.
Yeah, I want to hold him up there for a period of time. All right. So I can rain my effects on top of him and make him dead. Right. That's not to be confused with this. What's that? That's a B.
Oh.
It's block.
That's a block, right? Difference between a fix, with a fix, I'm just holding him up there for a period of time. Right? He's going to breach or bypass my obstacle. Okay. A block, he's not getting through it. Right. That's why I said earlier, like a block is significant. Right. It's a significant emotional event for us to put in a block obstacle. Right, because the resources and the man hours that are required to do this, right, and then it's also a significant emotional event for the enemy because he's going to expend all of his breach assets and capabilities to try to breach it, right, and then he dead anyway, right. What's that?
Trap.
No.
Turn.
Turn. All right. With a turn, I want to move him from his avenue of approach that he wants to go on into where I want to kill him. All right. So I don't turn him into the middle of my engagement area. All right. The turn obstacle is shaping in and feeding into my engagement area. Okay. So I'm not going to draw a turn and place a turn obstacle right in the middle of my EA. It's going to be on the edges of it or outside of it, right, to move the enemy into my engagement area. And then I might have a fix in there, so I hold him up in a particular place for a period of time that enables me to mass effects. All right. All right, what's that bad boy right there? That's a D.
Disrupt.
Disrupt, right? So what's a disrupt obstacle intended to do?
Separate the enemy's forces, so they break up.
Right, break up his formation, right? He thinks he's in this like killer flying V formation, right? Where he's able to mass firepower towards the front, right? And he's going to overwhelm us with his destructive firepower until he hits that disrupt obstacle, and all of a sudden all of his tanks and IFVs start going cattywampus on him, right? And now he's lost the ability to mass his direct fires. Right? So that's a good one. I like disrupt. All right, so that's obstacle intent, right? So when we're planning and integrating obstacles, think about the intent that you need to have, right, to put the enemy in the position where you can kill them in your engagement area. All right, so think about your obstacle intent and just think those four: fix, blocks, turn, disrupt. All right, now I'd really throw block out because, especially at the company platoon level, you're not going to block. All right, that's a lot.
So when it says plan and integrate obstacles, it's not, well, obviously when you're physically there doing it, that does involve the actual, like, what you come up with, but overall it's more of just the concept of what you're hoping to achieve with them.
Right. It's the intent you wish to achieve with your obstacle. Okay.
Not necessarily the physical obstacles themselves.
Right. You know, and you can break open the manual and it will tell you, if you pull out like FN 5-34 engineer field data, it will tell you if you want a fixed obstacle, this is the requirements. This is how much wire, this is how many pickets, this is how many anti-personnel mines, anti-tank mines, right? To achieve the effect that you desire. Okay. Yeah, so think at the small unit level, at the platoon company level, you don't have the capabilities to put a block in, right? If I want to put a true block obstacle in, I probably need an engineer battalion to do it, right? Because they're going to have all the assets and the people and the expertise, right? But I can put a turn in, especially you think out FTX, you think advanced camp. If I go there and I take some of those big logs and I form some kind of piece of junk out in the middle, right? If a cadet opposing force comes up on there, they're going to be like, well, this ain't normal. This ain't right. And they're probably going to bypass it or attempt to they think they're bypassing it. Well, they're not bypassing, they're turning, right? Because when you put that out there and they're like, well, I'm not going to climb over this, or this looks funny, and they come skirt around it, they think they're bypassing, but the effect that you're getting out of it is they just turned into your engagement area. Okay. Right. Like one of my most fun war stories in training, right? It's like this way back, like 2002, when I was a scout platoon leader. I had one of my scout OPs observing, we call it a goat. It's a goat trail, but it can fit a Bradley, right? So it's kind of wide, right? So you can fit like one armored vehicle through it. This OP took 2 infrared chem lights, cracked them, shook them, and threw them in the middle of this trail. All right, when the attacking platoon came up, right, and they got night vision goggles on, so they can see IR and assume your enemy can see infrared, right? Because that capability is cheap now and it's proliferated. They rose up on this. They saw IR chem lights thrown in the middle of the trail, and they froze for like a half hour. They just stopped, right? And my OP out there calls up, right? Red 1 is Red 5. Enemy scout platoon. This 10-digit grid, right? Fire for effect. Right? So just a little bit of something out there that's out of the ordinary can have a massive effect on the enemy force. Right? They looked at 2 IR chem lights out there and was like, what kind of witchcraft is in front of me? Right? And made them stop, cease what they were doing. And we were able to mass indirect fires on them. Right? Because I got 6 enemy armored vehicles at this 10-digit grid. Right? Boom. That's easy. That fight's over. Right? And I didn't shoot any of my own bullets. Right? Because you like shooting other people's bullets because you don't have to resupply them yourself. Bullets are heavy. I can shoot the artillery's bullet and achieve my purpose, by all means do it, right? Right, but that was a mix of planning and integrating obstacles. And tying in something we'll talk, talk in a minute that you know what it is. It's not this one, because what's this one? Number 5.
In place weapon systems.
Yeah. All right, what are we talking about here? What weapon systems are we talking?
I guess it would depend on the size of the element. So, for like at advanced camp, if it's a platoon, they're going to be emplacing the heavy weapons.
Yeah, your heavy weapons, your organic direct fire weapon systems, right? Whatever you have. If that's an M4, it's an M4. If it's an M17 pistol, it's an M17 pistol, right? If it's an M3 A3 cavalry fighting vehicle, that's what it is, right? It's that big old Bradley that's going in there. You're emplacing your weapon systems, okay? Because once we plan to integrate obstacles and we start emplacing obstacles, what do we have to do with them? You have to observe them. Okay. 2 things you have to observe: your obstacles, because an obstacle that's not observed is not an obstacle, right? You're going to allow them to covertly breach it, or if they just completely bypass it and you're not overwatching your obstacle, right? It's might not be having the intent that you want, right? So we immediately place our weapon systems, right? And we've already determined where to kill the enemy. We've shaped that engagement area with obstacles, right? So now we're going to shape it further with our direct fire weapon systems. So, whether if that's squads, if that's machine guns, if that's tanks, that's Bradleys, it's Strykers, doesn't matter. And place those direct fire weapon systems. So we're massing our direct fire effects along with our obstacle effort, all right, to defeat the enemy scheme of maneuver. All right, see how it all ties right back up the top. Okay.
Plan and integrate indirect fires.
Plan and integrate indirect fires. All right, so how do we do this?
You can identify grid coordinates and like assign them a code name, so you can just quickly call fire support on that area.
Right. Yeah, and you get an echelon indirect fires to also achieve effect. Right, and you can achieve some of these same effects that your obstacles have with indirect fires. You can achieve disrupt with indirect fires. So imagine if you tie your indirect fires in, echeloned it with your obstacle effort, right? I'm achieving disrupt. Then the enemy hits your disrupt obstacle, right? That now I've just multiplied the effect. And now that they hit the disrupt obstacle, they're in direct fire weapons systems range. So they're disrupted times 2, right? And now we've hit engagement criteria that I have Abrams tanks and Bradley fighting vehicles and javelins all simultaneously engaging this enemy, right? Who's already been disrupted with indirect fires. And now they've hit a disrupt obstacle. And we got 120 tank main gun. We have tow missiles and javelins all hitting them at the same time. Not fun, right? Not a good time, right? So think when we plan to integrate our indirect fires, how we echelon indirect fires, right? At the far edge of my engagement area, that's probably a great place for artillery if I have it, or at least 120 millimeter mortars, right? Get back closer to my position, that's where I can throw in the 60 millimeter mortars and then transition to direct fires, right? And that's how I achieve, maximizing my effect in the engagement area. If you have close combat attack, like you have 2 Apaches that are allocated to you for this as well, put them jokers in a battle position, right? And plan for them just like you do your ground maneuver force, right? And defense, if you treat those Apaches just same as you would treat a rifle squad or a tank platoon and put them in a battle position, that allows them to move within that BP, right, and continue to achieve direct fire effect on the enemy, right? Because Apache's got direct fire weapon systems, right? It's got a 30 millimeter cannon, right, and Hellfire missiles. Really bad time for any enemy, all right? Right, flying tanks are scary. All right, what's number 7?
Rehearse and execute operations in the engagement area.
Right, rehearse and execute. There's something really brilliant about the defense. A rehearsal. What is that? It's amazing. You can't really do it in the offense. You can do it in the defense.
Is it that like they're already at their place where they're going to execute, so they have a better idea of what they're going to be doing?
Yeah, you can rehearse on the ground you're going to fight in. Right? That's pretty nice. I'm trying to figure out how to do this. See what I'm trying to do? It'd be badass if I can figure it out. There it is. Woohoo! Yeah, you get a rehearse. You can conduct a full dress rehearsal on the ground, the actual ground you will fight on. You can do that in a defense. You don't get to do that in offense. All right, you do that, try to do that in offense, you're probably going to die, right? But we can do that in a defense. All right, I just found this map, and it's not perfect, but we'll look at EA development. Yeah, through this lens. So where we'll identify likely enemy avenues of approach, right? Well, he's got one here. It kind of opens up like this. Right, so. All right, we'll just draw this. Right. I haven't done them, but likely enemy avenue of approach. Enemy scheme of maneuver. We identify this is going to be his direction of main attack because that makes more sense. And then he's going to support by fire from here, right? So within that, he's going to have platoon, and that's support by fire, right? And then he has, and we'll make that mech infantry. I should probably make it a diamond shape because it's enemy. But I'm bad. So what happens when you retire? You become dumb. All right. This attack, he's going to do a tank platoon, right? And he has another kind of platoon back here. That's his reserve, right? And we'll say that's a mech infantry platoon. All right, so there's the enemy scheme of maneuver. He's going to lead with the mech infantry platoon that's going to support by fire along this avenue of approach, and his main direction of attack is here, and he's got a tank platoon. Then he has another mech platoon that acts as a reserve, so it can reinforce the support building by fire position, or it can follow and assume the tank platoon, or furthermore, the tank platoon could be his breach force if he needs to breach tactical and protective obstacles, and that mech infantry platoon becomes his assault force, right? So bam, there's an enemy scheme of maneuver, right? So where do we want to kill the enemy at? Yeah, let's go. Right there, all right? I just draw a box. Cool. And then we give that a name. They got that nice little town of Elwood right there. We're just going to call it EA Elwood. And that simplifies my life. All right. So there's EA Elwood. All right. So we determine where to kill the enemy. Engagement area Elwood. Right. Give it a name. And your unit will have some kind of naming convention SOP. So all engagement areas are named after whatever Axis generals from World War II, NHL teams or something, right? So now we need to plan and integrate obstacles, right? So what kind of obstacle we want to throw in here? I can do this, right? I can put a turn in here. Maybe I don't want to do it there. That's a bad place. Maybe I want to put it here, right? Because I want to push him off of the route he wants to go in, right? So I get a turn back here, and there's a little bit of a spur coming off that I can tie it into that will push him down into this area. All right, and then I can give him a little bit of a disrupt. Do we like that?
I have a question real fast about turns.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, this might be kind of redundant, but if we have two turns like almost back to back or like parallel to each other, would that just turn like basically have the enemy going in a circle and it would basically be a fix? Like, or would that be like not helpful to do and a waste of resources?
It's probably a waste of resources, because you're probably not achieving the purpose you want to achieve with it.
Which is just basically like killing the enemy.
Yeah.
In this.
So that's why when I look at here, I want to turn him because he wants to use a peculiar approach, right? He wants to go along this axis for his main attack. So if I put a turn back here, it's going to push him off of that a little bit. It's going to make him go a little bit further south than he wanted to, right? Because he might want to come up here a little bit because he wants to skirt this dry creek and use a bit of this terrain to come around the backside.
Okay.
Right. So I want to push him a little bit south here. So I just put a little bit of a turn in there. All right. And then I'll push him down south. And then I put a disrupt in there. Or I could use a fix, either one. Right. I like disrupt because I like breaking up his formation. Now he's not fighting as a coherent team.
Right? Okay. I just wanted to check because I wasn't sure which of the integrated obstacles would be best to utilize, and I assume it's also like fairly terrain dependent, but
yeah, absolutely, it's going to be terrain dependent, and it's going to be. It could also be tied at a higher level, at battalion or brigade level, to what resources we have. Right. So
right.
If I don't have priority of engineer support, I might not be able to do, extravagant obstacles, right? I might have, because I'm using infantrymen and tankers and scouts to put obstacles in, right? And we can all do it. It's a skill level 1 task for everyone to drive a picket in the ground and put up concertina wire. right? You know,
Okay.
and we used to train on mines, but we don't anymore, right? So I do need an engineer effort
Okay.
for some obstacle effects, particularly a fix or a block, right? That because they're going to come with the capabilities to do that for me. You know, but really, you want and how you want the enemy to look when you start engaging them with direct fires.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. That's why we're here. All right. Now we need to in place our weapon systems. Right. We can initially do this by developing battle positions, right? So I can put a platoon BP in here. We got a little bit of terrain here. Looks like I can tie into. All right. And I got some natural water and some highly restrictive terrain here that would probably allow me to put an infantry platoon right up there, right? That'd be a great place to put an infantry platoon with some javelins. All right. I could use tank platoon here. Right. And then I also, you know, and later on I need to think about where we employ every one of those, each tank, each squad. Right. And even up here, I can do a infantry platoon, but the infantrymen are going to be dismounted. Right. And then they're going to have to couple options with their Bradleys, right? They can find fighting positions for their Bradleys with inside that BP, primary and alternate positions for the Bradleys, right? So we can use those maximize the effects of our direct fire weapon systems because Bradley comes with tow missiles and a 25 millimeter chain gun, right? With anti-tank sabot round, depleted uranium sabot rounds or high explosive rounds, which is pretty nice. And it also has 800 rounds of 7.62 loaded up for the coax on their machine gun on every Bradley. It's kind of nice to lay down on the enemy, right? So we've in place direct fire weapon systems, right? Right. Think about our sectors of fire. Make sure we've got integrated sectors of fire, and here we do. Cool, right? Make sure also we communicate what our engagement criteria is. Okay. I don't want to start as soon as like one BMP3 enters EA Elwood, and all of a sudden I have a tank shoot it and kill it. Well, crap. You know, that didn't achieve my effect, you know, intent and the effect I wanted to have on the enemy. Right. I need something more robust to communicate to my soldiers. Right. Engagement criteria is 4 or more enemy armored vehicles inside engagement area Elwood. Right. Because that's more than a platoon. Right. Enemy platoons are 3 vehicles, according to, you know, Russian/Soviet doctrine. Right. So 3 tanks or 3 BMPs, armored vehicle. Now I've met engagement criteria because now he's committed. Right. When he has more than a platoon in EAL, what he's committed to his course of action. Right. If he's just got 1 vehicle that came in, well, that might be his reconnaissance patrol. Right. So if I engage his reconnaissance patrol, he's going to potentially change his scheme of maneuver. Right. And then my defense could be invalid now. So all this preparation we did is kaput. Right. So make sure we communicate engagement criteria. Right. And I don't care if it's cadet platoon at advanced camp. Right. Communicate your engagement criteria. Right. Especially those of you who've already been sitting through, have already gone to it and have done this. Right. And you felt the pain of when that one wildcat opened fire and committed the entire platoon to a course of action that the platoon leader did not want to get committed to. Right? How many times does that happen? Or you've seen it at FTX, you've seen it at labs, right? One person who doesn't understand or intent wasn't communicated to him forces a course of action, right, for the platoon leader, for the commander. Ensure we communicate intent, engagement criteria, and it gets down to the soldier level, right? Or else we can have problems, right? We could commit ourselves to be committed to a course of action that we did not want to take when that happens, right? All right, we can plan or integrate indirect fires. All right, and we'll do these in black. All right, so what kind of indirect fire effect do I want to have on the enemy? Do I want to reinforce this disrupt? Potentially. So I can put indirect fire target there. All right. If I want to disrupt, I'm going to use multiple, right? And kind of like what Seth talked about, they can get grouped, right? So when you see these, you know, it might be like you might have target group Alpha 1 Alpha. And it's not going to be perfect here, but all right, so that's target group Alpha 1 Alpha. And then each target in there will also have a code, right? You know, Alpha Bravo 1000. That could be one of them. And we usually do these in like, right? So there's target Alpha Bravo 1000. This one would be Alpha Bravo 1005. Next one's Alpha Bravo 1010. All right, and we split the numbers out like there because I can shift from a known point. Right, so target Alpha Bravo 1000 is a known point now. So if I adjust fire or call for fire off, and I'm shifting from a known point, we're just going to give it a new target number. Now it's going to be 1001. Right, so the artillery world builds that flexibility into their targets. Okay, so just you'll see that in the future. Just to kind of frame that for you now, right? All right, so I'm not going to number all those, but there's our disrupt, indirect fire, intent, right? And that might be 155 artillery, right? We may also have, you know, one priority artillery target and one priority mortar target, right? So, you know, I might want to use my mortar target here. That's fine. Okay. And I said one, but I drew two because I cheat. Okay. So that way, you know, I have more of an armor threat in the north, right, where their direction of main attack is coming. So I've used my artillery there. All right. And then this mech infantry down here to support by fire, I'd use mortars on that, right? Because I can achieve an indirect fire effect on infantry with mortars, right? Mortars and armor, you'll get some effect, but not as much as if you drop mortars on infantry, right? I drop artillery on armor, has a greater effect, okay? So think that as well. All right, when I draw it out here, is it looking logical? Any questions so far before we talk rehearse? All right, and this last step, rehearse and execute. All right, if we take the enemy units off of there, right, and pull them back, beautiful thing, and we did this every time we set up, you know, a defense, and we had time in the timeline to do it. We would physically have a tank drive the engagement area, right? So we would have someone start out there, and it was usually the company XO, right? Because he's not in one of these battle positions. And in the armor world, our XOs are fighting XOs. So he doesn't have a maybe not a dedicated fighting position, a battle position, right? Because he's got other responsibilities and he can fight. But usually it'd be my XO. And so he might start out here, right? And he would drive this way. Okay. And then these platoons who have that avenue of approach inside their sector of fire can see the tank moving, right? They can identify dead space. They can verify engagement criteria. They can verify ranges on a range card, right? We can identify a trigger for when I call this indirect fire, right? I need to call that when the enemy is right here, because when the XO is moving, it took him 4 minutes to go from this point to where that indirect fire target is, which is about how long it'll take for that 120 mortar mission to get put in, right? So I can time everything. I can see it. I can see dead space. I can see my engagement criteria being met, right? And he'll back up and he'll go the other way. Do the same thing. All right, and the XO can also see, is that obstacle really going to turn me? Yep, it actually turned me and I had to go this way. All right. Don't let your XO go run over anti-tank mines. All right. That's bad. But he can come out and see, yep, that obstacle turns. All right. And this platoon can identify their sectors of fire, engagement criteria are being met. The trigger to call this target group. Alpha 1 Alpha. What's the trigger? Oh, when as soon as they cross this line and they've entered the engagement area, I have to call that indirect fire target, right? Because it takes 7 minutes for 155 artillery to impact, right? So I have to call that as soon as he enters. You know, two of his vehicles have entered the EA. Awesome. And I see that like once XO crosses here, that's probably the range that my direct fire engagement criteria is met, right? So I can add that in and plan for that. Okay? So that's a beautiful thing about rehearsals in the defense. I can actually visualize it. We can rehearse in the battle position, right? I can rehearse my primary and alternate fighting positions inside the BP. Okay, this platoon can have an alternate battle position right here, right? This platoon can have an alternate battle position that's right here, right? And they can rehearse the routes for every tank. They leave this one and enter this one, right? And you will rehearse that. All right, how do I get this Bradley from here over here, right? I can rehearse this route. I can time this route. All right, I can time how long it takes my dismounted team with the javelins who are right here in the BP to move from this position, right, to here. Well, how long does it take for 400 meters for two dismounted infantrymen with a javelin, with a clue and 4 javelin missiles to move from here, this place, and move over here? I don't know. Well, go do it and hit my stopwatch. All right. We can do those things in the defense. You can do it in offense. Right? All right, guys. So with that's the big stuff on the. So nice BWAC shows up at the last minute as we're wrapping up. With that, you guys have questions?
So would it be, I guess, time dependent, but would it be uh, a good thing to like come up with a sort of like alternate plan, like in case they like do something completely like unknown or something, you know? Well, like not completely unknown, because how do you plan for that? But like an alternate, like what if there's like another way that they might have been approaching or something like that, you know?
Yeah, well, and so you consider the most likely scheme of maneuver, right, and the most dangerous, right, for the enemy. With that, you're kind of playing a game with probabilities as well, right? What is the probability they will execute their most dangerous? But what's the probability? Is it inherently different? Is it significantly different from their most likely course of action? Right. And when you get down to the platoon level, doesn't matter, right? If his most dangerous course of action is that he's going to fire a non-persistent chemical strike on the town of Brandy Station. What difference does that make, really, to how you conduct the defense? You're going to do it Mach 4 now, right? Because our weather analysis said that the winds are going, 10 miles per hour to the southeast, right? So the winds are going to blow that right through this tank platoon. Okay, so now we're just going to fight this in Mach 4. It does have effects, right? Especially when I talk this infantry platoon up here, and I want the javelin team to potentially move, and we're doing that in Mach 4, and it's summer. That sucks, right? So the timing of movements will be longer. Target acquisition is a little bit harder in a mask, right? So there's a ratchet up of difficulty there, but it can still be known, right? Because we can rehearse it, and we can understand those changes on the course of action. Does that answer it, Ben?
Yes, and sort of like in line with that, what if it comes to a point where like you would need like a sort of planned withdrawal, like if necessary, like if it turns out like it's being overrun and like you can't hold the position anymore, like is that something that you would want to come already prepared with planning in?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I didn't really hit on. But that's part of your step 5 EA development and placing weapon systems, because we talked about engagement criteria. I also need to talk about disengagement criteria, right? When do we disengage? And then the final thing I need to talk about is displacement, right? So we have those three things you have to address within there as well, right? You have engagement criteria. And I kind of hit on it when I talk that we have primary and alternate battle positions, right? That's a mini displacement, right? If I'm just moving from a primary battle position to an alternate battle position, right? It's the same sector of fire. It's oriented on the same enemy avenue of approach, right? But it's a mini displacement that we conduct internally, right? And if I have a subsequent battle position, that could be something that's further in depth, right? Because I have a planned movement within my defense, right? That adds depth, right? Or buys additional time in a defense, right? So I can have criteria to displace to a subsequent battle position, right? And then I could also have a supplementary battle position if I look at something like that, right? Different sector of fire, same avenue of approach, different sector of fire, right? So it supplements, right? So this could be where we have, it could be planned over time and space to do this, or it could be oh shit, I need to move to a supplementary, right? But generally, your primary, your alternate, and your subsequent battle positions are what you'll see the most. Okay, does that answer it there?
Yes, it does.
Sir, at the beginning of the lecture, you mentioned that America is a very offensive force where we're built to attack. I know some of our allies consider themselves to be defense forces. Is there a significant difference in how they conduct operations overseas? Like when we're working together with them, do they
That's more of a political philosophy when they say that, because you talk about like the Japanese self-defense force, right? So they call themselves a defense force, but they still have an offensive capability. And actually, Japan is forward deployed forces now. They're on the African continent, so they're not so much a self-defense force anymore. I know because I've seen them. That's more of a political philosophy when they say that, more than a military strategy, military tactics aspect of warfare for them.
So like our Canadian and Australian allies, they're gonna be out there pretty much doing what we're doing.
Yeah. Australia has Abrams tanks, right? Canada has Leo 2 A4 main battle tanks, which is the same cannon as an Abrams. The primary difference is it's a diesel engine instead of a turbine engine, right? But it's an offensive weapon system, right? So when they say when they talk defense, they're defensive, or they're defense forces, right? They're really talking about political philosophy and not military capability, right? Now, one country that is more defensive oriented is like Israel, right? And for UMS4s, when you go to the tank plant in Lima next semester, you'll see an Israeli vehicle that's being built on contract by General Dynamics there. It weighs over it's like 84 tons is its total weight. That's not offensive in nature, right? And they're powering it with a diesel engine. But they never plan on forward deploying that outside of Israel, right? So that is a defense force, right? The Merkava Mark IV main battle tank, great tank, amazing weapon system, right? It's 120 millimeter main gun. It's got an active protection system. It's got 363-degree camera system. That tank also holds an infantry squad and a 60 millimeter mortar system in it, right? And it weighs a lot. It's an 80-ton tank, but that is designed to defend. Right? It's not designed. It can conduct an offense, right? But that's not its primary purpose. So Israel is probably the best example of a defensive military. Or if you look at us prior to 1980, the United States prior to, as well as most of our NATO allies, we were designed for the defense. All right, our weapon systems were designed to defend. They were not designed to conduct an offense. They were designed to fight out of 1 and 2 tier fighting positions along the Fulda Gap to prevent the Soviet horde from penetrating into Western Europe. That changed when we came out with Abrams and Bradley, Apache, Paladin, Blackhawk, right? These fast, modern, precision weapon systems that we started fielding in the early 80s, up until about 1988 is when we were fielding these, and that's where our tactical mindset changed from a defense to an offense, right? Because we, in the 70s and prior, we had, the M60 tank, not well armored, not very fast. You put that thing dig it into a hole, it's an awesome tank, right? You dig Abrams into a hole, you've taken away its purpose to exist. Right? Our personnel carrier in the 70s and prior was the M113, right? That doesn't have offensive capabilities. It's an aluminum hull, right? I shoot a 50 cal at it and I'm going to shred it, right? But if I dig into a hole and I use it as a machine gun platform with an infantry squad basing operations out of it, it's okay, right? When we developed and fielded Paladin, it's the same basic system that we had back in, during the Vietnam War, even, right? With the M109 A3 that we had in the late 60s and the 70s. But I completely changed the fire control system of it when I created the M109 A6 Paladin variant, right? That gives me incredible accuracy at long range, right? That enables offensive operations of Abrams and Bradley. So when we talk defense, offense, that's more of what we're talking about. It's a little bit of philosophy and history there too.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else? It's my cool whiteboard. I figured out how to put a map on there. I'm dangerous now. All right. If that, hey, go ahead, Speedy.
Sorry,
I can't
came
hear
in
you, though.
late. I have one question about the engagement, disengagement, and displacement. Could you briefly summarize those? Because I'm familiar with everything except those last three.
Okay. Engagement criteria. This is when I want my elements to engage the enemy with direct fires. Okay. So it's a trigger. And I need to define it in terms of, enemy organization, time, range, or a combination thereof, right? So here's my EA Elwood, right? My engagement criteria is they do not engage with direct fires until 4 or more enemy armored vehicles have entered EA Elwood, right? I don't want to shoot at the first one we see. I want 4 or more because I want more than one platoon committed to their attack, right? Because once there's 4 in there, they're committed to this course of action. There's just 1 in there, they're not necessarily committed. He can stop, he can withdraw, right? Or change the course of action, or that might just be a reconnaissance asset, right? Not his actual main attack, right? So that's why I define engagement criteria, right? You don't want that cadet from, whatever school that you make fun of all the time in your defense shoot at the first thing they see. Well, we're not going to engage until we see a fire team. Once we see a fire team, once we see 4 or more of the opposing force in the engagement area, that's when we engage with direct fire, right? Well, I want 4 or more within 300 meters. Okay. Disengagement criteria is when you want them to stop shooting. All right. And then displacement criteria is when we move to a subsequent, an alternate, a subsequent, or supplementary battle position. What is the trigger, right? So that trigger could be I have a phase line. I could draw a phase line here or whatever, like this, right? Phase line oak, we'll call it. Displacement criteria is 2 or more enemy armored vehicles penetrating phase line oak. At that point, displace to your subsequent battle position. Okay, so here's my primary for this platoon. If 2 or more enemy armored vehicles cross phase line oak, they move from here back to here to the subsequent battle position, right? Because that buys us whatever 800 meters of distance and time. Okay, so we can continue to engage and destroy the enemy to achieve our purpose. And this is planned, so this isn't a die in place battle position.
That like reminded me of like a pretty good example to make it clear in my head of in Saving Private Ryan when they're defending the town and then their backup is to meet across the bridge to plan to blow it. Like that would that basically be exactly what a supplement or like the displacement criteria and then their supplement.
Yeah, and that'd probably be supplementary and a subsequent, right? Because they're changing, their direct fire orientation. They're just going to blow a damn bridge. But yeah, I would. That's displacement criteria, right? The enemy does this. We're going to stop. We're going to disengage from that enemy, and we're going to displace to a subsequent or supplementary battle position and conduct a further action, right? We're going to, fire a fast cam minefield, a Vulcan minefield. We're going to detonate, and blow the bridge. We're going to fire final protective fire, whatever that is, right? But that's a good point. And you continue to tie it to something, right? Continue to tie that to action. We don't run away. Right? And it can absolutely be planned. Displacements can be planned, right? Maybe I want to completely destroy this enemy, so I'm going to displace to a series of subsequent battle positions, right? Because that might make the enemy think that he's having success. He's not. I'm letting him do that because I'm stretching him, right? I'm stretching his capability, his lines of communication, right? And I'm continuing to kill him, right? And now I have planned indirect fires that will continue to call in on him. I might have an additional obstacle effort, right? That I move around or through, or I'm firing, an artillery delivered scatterable minefield, right? That's going to give me that fix effect after I've displaced to a subsequent battle position. Right, so there's a lot of things you can do in a defense, right? And that really resembles the offense because I'm moving and I'm continuing to fire and I'm maintaining pressure and tempo on the enemy.
Yeah, that also reminds me of last year's spring FTX, or well, the first year spring FTX, I guess. When we had our defense, our PL for that came up with a plan like whichever side gets hit with their assaulting element, we have a backup position. When we call this, you fall back to that, and we'll have our reserved counter assault element swing around to whichever side and then hit them as they are drawn in because they think they're pushing us back.
Right. But you're actually conducting a mobile defense. Right?
And it worked out beautifully. Like the assaulting element had to go up and tap the people with their weapons, obviously because the paintball guns weren't working, and because like nobody knew that they were even there coming up on them.
Yep. And just when we do that, when we plan that, I would caution everyone, watch the words that you use because words have meanings, right? Because in that instance, he says fall back. You're not falling back. You're displacing. Falling back implies retreat or giving up.
Well, yeah,
it's not. Right, that's not the way. But I'm just saying, in general, be careful with the words we use when we're talking these things, and we try to use our doctrinal vocabulary, right? Especially you get out there a bunch of meat eating 11-19 series non-commissioned officers, and you say we're falling back. They're like, bullshit, sir. We ain't falling back on anything. All right, we're gonna grab these bastards by the throat and shoot them in the belly. All right. Nothing else? I'm gonna figure out how to download this week's, and I recorded last week's, and I'll upload it. Probably on my personal YouTube channel, which is pretty fire, right? I'll probably throw them up there, and then I'll shoot out a link.
Okay, because yeah, I've been wondering where these recordings have been going.
Yeah, I have to find them. They're saved somewhere in Microsoft's sphere. I gotta find them now. I've hit record. It says you're recording. I just gotta figure out where it's recorded. All right. Nothing else? Stay out of trouble this weekend, y'all. They'll be spreading COVID around my town.
Going home.
My daughter's hockey team's practices were canceled for this weekend because somebody got the Ronas. But the other two kids can still play. Which is good because the high schooler has a game Sunday and my 13-year-old has a game Monday. Luckily, my daughter didn't have any games this weekend anyway. So that works.
He's a fan. My grandma just got knee surgery, so.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to have surgery on my repair my torn Achilles tendon in a couple weeks. If y'all have the Ronas, they're going to shut down the hospitals, right? Yeah, torn Achilles tendon really sucks if you didn't know that. I walk like I'm 90 years old. It's awesome. All right. I'm going to stay on for 1 minute. If you got anything else, if not, vaya con Dios.
Thank you, sir.
Anytime.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend.
Have a great weekend.
Wale.
There it is.